Welcome back. We're bringing the hashtag Dagga debate back to life here on Newsroom. Now, you know we have a checkered history with all sorts of activities that have been going on this show with regards to the discussion around marijuana use. Meanwhile, of course, pro-Dagga activist Myrtle Clark has welcomed the announcement and called it a rational statement and a bold step. Now, to discuss this further, we're joined by the Dagga couple this morning. That's Myrtle Clark and Julian Stobbs. No, they're not married. They live in sin.
That's correct.
Morning, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Myrtle, let's start with you, seeing that you've been put in the forefront a little bit in this story. This is a little bit of a shift from the CDA. What's your reaction to this?
Thank you very much, CDA. Thank you for getting out of the same tired old arguments that get repeated over and over again and giving a new perspective to this whole debate, moving in the right direction, we would say.
Julian, you heard what Peter Yuko said a little bit earlier. He talks about the middle of the road.
Yes, indeed.
This is where their position is now in the middle of the road. It's not criminalization, it's not legalization, it's decriminalization.
It's a start even. It's a start of another paradigm, perhaps. It might be the chink in the armour of the last apartheid law. But we've got to be very careful with decriminalisation because it hasn't really worked anywhere on the planet yet. Holland, Peter mentioned Holland. They've had it's a 40-year-old decriminalisation programme now. But they've got awful problems because there's so many grey areas with it.
Yeah.
You're allowed to have it in your pocket, but you're not allowed to buy it. Where did he get it? Who supplies it? Where's it all from? So there's more grey areas with decriminalisation than there is with outright illegality some of the time.
What does decriminalisation mean? Does it mean you can grow it at home?
No. No.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't mean you can use it as medicine. Nothing changes. The black market is still the black market.
Yeah.
People who use it as medicine are still considered as criminals. But what does happen is a low-level user like Myrtle and I, we might not have a monkey on our shoulders and looking over our backs all the time when we want to smoke some cannabis. So we wouldn't go to jail as a result of having a couple of grams on our person, perhaps. But that is the only thing that changes. And as a friend of ours in New Zealand rightly pointed out, decriminalisation doesn't stop any war on drugs. It just extends it. It's a little bit more humanitarian, perhaps, harm reduction.
Myrtle, does this mean that our children, young people in South Africa are still at risk? They still have to go to what we call known drug dealers to acquire marijuana because it's decriminalised, but you can't grow it, you can't access it in another way. Is that what it means, Storm?
Yes. It definitely means that people who cultivate or trade in the cannabis plant would still be considered criminals, and those are the very people who would be supplying that cannabis. You're not even allowed to, as you said, grow your own.
Yeah.
So the police could rock up at your house and say, okay, you're standing in your kitchen with a bud in your pocket.
Yeah.
That is legal. But you cannot stand in your kitchen with a pot plant on the windowsill. That is not illegal. Now, that doesn't really make sense. And I think that while it is a positive move on the part of the CDA, they haven't really considered this whole thing of decriminalisation. Maybe they should put their appeal for funding for research into decriminalisation itself and whether it's worked. Lots of other clever people around the world have done lots of research that the CDA now want to repeat. Let them do some new research in actual decriminalisation.
One point about that Myrtle made about the police.
Yeah.
We had a giggle when the CDA announced this because we can't believe that it would ever filter down to the SAPS. The boys in blue in Neisner and George and Randburg, the Rottweilers in blue, we call them.
Yeah.
There's draconian drug policies in those 3 police stations. And we don't think decriminalisation will phase those guys at all.
Well, you mentioned the police. Now, in the past, we've had contentious scenarios like crop spraying in call them very rural communities who've depended for generations on growing marijuana.
Yeah.
We're talking in the Kai region, it's in the Eastern Cape and so forth. Do you expect that to still continue?
Of course, yeah. The decriminalisation does not do anything to stop any spraying because the police are looking They always hide behind the 1961 United Nations Drug Conventions,
Yeah.
but nowhere in the conventions does it say that you must incarcerate people and you must spray poison on Dagga fields. The convention says go about your business to keep the plant illegal, to stop the supply and to reduce the demand. That's what the convention says. So use all means at your disposal. So the United Nations doesn't actually condone the spraying of the former trans guy.
What would you like to see as the next steps?
Okay, the next step would be, of course, as Peter Uko said, everybody needs funding. Okay, and everybody needs research, but we don't want to be repeating the research of the use of cannabis in cancer or the use of cannabis in spasticity. Our research needs to be on the model for South Africa and how it works. And that research needs to be done at home, and it needs to be done by everybody, not just the prohibitionists.
Julian, what does the early numbers say about the model for South Africa?
Well, we've been to Europe to see many models close up. Peter mentioned Portugal. We've been to Spain. Spain has got an incredible system of cannabis community clubs, and that's what we would like to see start in South Africa. And maybe with the blessing of the CDA, we could possibly have something like a green light area, a whole street in Johannesburg dedicated to the use of the cannabis plant. No alcohol in. You can have police at one end if you like. You can barricade the place off. We don't care. But we want to start a social experiment to show South Africa that the sky will not fall in and you will not get a street of zombified people.
Is this a discussion you're prepared to have with Peter Uko and with the CDA? And do you think this is the discussion that they're prepared to have with you?
Yes, definitely. You know, we shared the same room at the South African Drug Policy Conference in January. The relations between the policy activists and the CDA didn't get off to a good start at the beginning of the conference, but by the end of the conference we were all getting on really well, and the conversations were becoming far more rational. And we look forward to this. We have to speak to each other. We want to be invited to all of their meetings. We'll invite them to all of our meetings. Yeah. And we can go forward with this together. Just stop throwing the gateway theory and what about the children in our faces. Let's move on. Let's be a bit more mature about this.
She said it.
Now, I want to put this to you guys, because I've had the Minister of Health in the studio a couple of times in the last month, and one of them was the smoking bans that he's very passionate about. And when I say very passionate about, he doesn't believe smoking belongs in any shape or form in the 21st century. How are you going to have this discussion with someone like the Minister of Health, who's a passionate anti-smoker?
Well, let me put it this way. We recently went to New York for the United Nations big special session on drugs. And we were very excited because we'd been told that it was decriminalized in New York. So we thought, we'll be able to smoke. It'll be great. We can score something, we'll be able to smoke, and it'll be all good. Yeah. Except they've got really draconian smoking laws in the whole of New York. You can't ignite and burn anything anywhere in New York. So it kind of burst our bubble a bit. So we've just been to the 21st century New York, where there is an outright ban on smoking, and human beings make a plan. They will make a plan. I don't think to talk to the health minister about such a thing, it's a dichotomy. We are so far removed from his train of thought. It's going to take a lot of time for us both to come together to have a rational discussion.
You believe that?
Yes, I do believe that. But it's smoking what? You know, you can't say just smoking, full stop. Smoking cannabis does not cause cardiovascular disease. Smoking cannabis does not cause respiratory problems. Smoking cannabis mixed with tobacco does. Yeah. And we never promote smoking of anything. There's vaporizing, there's eating, there's all sorts of different ways.
He says that vaporizing is also not very good, and the early research says that the vaporizing is bad.
He has to try it before he says it. He can't say that because he's obviously never tried it before.
He's not going to try it.
He might have to. He might have to. He might get sick one day. But
what about Peter Uko's statement a little bit earlier? He talks about it's still a psychoactive drug.
He said it 7 times.
Yeah,
he said the word 7 times. He's scared of psychoactivity. Everyone is scared of psychoactivity.
Why?
Well, it's an unknown factor to them. It goes back to my last statement. He should try it. Psychoactivity might enhance your life. It certainly enhances our lives. Our life is in HD. We don't run away from reality. We enhance our reality with the use of the plant.
What do you say to some of those long-time users who talk about paranoia after many years of use, paranoia and increased fears and all those sorts of things?
Well, you know, it's all about using these teacher plants correctly and learning how to navigate into that space. And if you spend your life never using a psychoactive plant, okay, then you are never going to have that experience, and then you are never going to have the opportunity to learn how to use those plants correctly. I mean, one of the reasons why prohibition of alcohol was instituted in America in the first place was that nobody knew how to drink the new distilled liquor. They were drinking it by the beer glass. Whiskey, just like you were drinking beer.
Yes.
You know, so the same applies to cannabis. You need to learn how to navigate into it.
Right.
If you use cannabis in the wrong situation, in the wrong quantity or the wrong strength, you might get paranoid. You might get nauseous. You might get a whiteout.
So you shouldn't smoke marijuana and go and walk around in a mall, for instance. That
no, it works for us.
It works
It can dull the pain of the mall, yes, for sure.
Yeah, no,
but it's all in the
completely.
setting. It really is learning how to use this.
A lot of the
plant
negative
correctly.
publicity is dealing with adolescents using the plant.
Yeah.
They're finding their feet, and normally with adolescents, they're going for broke. They're trying to find their limitations, and it can go pear-shaped at times. Peer pressure is an awful thing. Have 4 beers, and then somebody says, here, smoke this.
Yeah.
And you do. And then it goes pear-shaped,
Yeah.
it goes green, it goes horrible. And that's the kind of thing that gets into an ICU in a hospital.
I've been told you have to go sit or lie down when that happens. But guys, we've run out of time. It's been a fantastic conversation we've had. That was 15 minutes. That just flew by.
Flew by.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in today. Of course, we've had some call it a shift in the thinking around the legalization, or as it's the Central Drug Authority call it, the decriminalization process of marijuana in South Africa. It's been a massive shift from what's been before. The Dagga Couple, Julian Stobbs and Myrtle Clark, been with us. They're known as the Dagga Couple. You can tweet them if you want more information about what's going on in the community. Let's take a look at some of the live tweets. Now, it's a question that everybody wants to have their say about. Damien Schmidt this morning says, Newsroom, the fact that the majority of people overwhelmingly support decriminalization, legalization speaks volumes. Yes, there's a massive move towards it. Kamal Mpilo Mpatla says, Newsroom, Dagga must never be legalized. He's probably never tried it. Loreo Fisher says, Newsroom, the benefits of legalization far outweighs the negatives. Some people even talk about commercialization. S.A. Jimrat says, Newsroom, war on drugs equals the current drug problem. Rather harm reduction through legalization. Science informs Dagga medicine, says the Jimrat. Well, we've got a lot of views coming in. We'll share those views with you throughout the 3 hours of this morning.